I spend a lot of time here talking about Tudor, Omega, Rolex, sometimes Breitling, Tissot, Seiko, whatever takes my interest over the course of the week. But the one brand I have been obsessed with since the very beginning of this year and even before then is Zenith. Now, at the beginning of this year, before Watches and Wonders, I found and have been wearing a Grail-worthy El Primero that I haven't even shared on the channel yet. But it's a watch that I have talked about for years. And the real luck of the whole scenario was that I found it for less than the price of a second-hand Omega Speedmaster. Let that sink in for a minute. I have to say it's one of the most fantastic watches I have ever had the privilege of experiencing. Such great care when it comes to finishing, polishing, radial brushing, open case back, and for that chronograph enthusiast, slim and elegant. I mean, it's the full package. If I were to wind the clock back and restart my watch collecting from the beginning again, I would be looking at Zenith a lot sooner. It's a little lesson I've learned. But it's taken some time for all of us to warm up to these new pilots. When they launched, we thought yes, and? So let's investigate. Zenith. Zenith is experiencing something of a renaissance, or at least in our watch enthusiast circles. Or maybe only some of us are seeing the light and pursuing them, I don't know. It's one of those well-known names in the industry that offers so much for what you're getting out of a watch. And a great friend of mine for years has said to keep an eye on Zenith. They could rise in popularity overnight. And to some extent, I think that interest is climbing. Compared to the names that the majority follow more closely, Zenith historically has been more creatively loose with their designs. They don't adhere to stringent blueprints. And they aren't a brand that you can really put your finger on. And this could be in part the reason why the majority don't follow them so closely, is that their designs can vary all over the place. There's nothing truly relatable that you can pinpoint, like an oyster case or a rivet bracelet or a flat link bracelet or a lyre lug case. Many will say that they are most famous for being a movement manufacturer, and without something like the El Primero, where would they be? It's a very good question. But I would counter and say that they have one of the most diverse catalogs of all brands out there today. From a classic A386 to the highly praised Rainbow Flyback, to the Elite, to the Captain, the Defy. There are too many to mention here. Now, when we think Zenith Pilot, we think Type 20, 1920s, 1930s, large, oversized, cathedral hands, not everyone's cup of tea. This watch has that Panerai-esque sort of feel, the kind of watch that you would wear over a flight jacket, and something that would feel more timely and appropriate 100 years ago. One of my favorites of the Type 20 Pilot was the limited edition blueprint. Seeing those projections on the crystal, a technical drawing including different line weights and handwritten script. I really wish Zenith would do more of this with their watches. But then if we have seen our fair share, we might think Chronometro Tipo, or the CP2, the A. Corelli, an amazing model that can be found for a bargain today. Highly, highly recommended. Zenith is a brand that, unknown to many, owns the trademark to place Pilot on their dials, and they have had it since 1904. The history of Zenith Pilot watches and their time recording devices is legendary, especially in those early years, right up there with names like Longines. And instead of just being another one of those watch brands that has all of those past historic exploits under their belts, we weren't around at the time when Zeppelins and biplanes were the best forms of intercontinental travel. Things have changed. In recent years, they produced one of the most technically impressive watches like the Stratos, the only watch to have ever traveled at the speed of sound, Mach 1.25 if I remember right, because it was strapped to the arm of Felix Baumgartner as he free fell from the edge of the Earth's atmosphere at 1,342 kilometers an hour. For the first time in over a decade, Zenith's new reinterpretation of the Pilot aims at creating a piece that is not only a modern reinterpretation, but one that wears many hats. A sports watch, a field watch, a pilot watch, a large date, and a flyback automatic chronograph. Now, if we were to look at the Pilot's design inspiration, this is where things get interesting. Just a few off the top of my head that I recognized in this watch. The Patek Philippe Aquanaut, the IWC Big Pilot, the Bulliver Lunar Pilot, and the Zin 857. There are elements in all of these watches that I think the new Zenith borrows. And if we were to look at all of these pieces individually, we would all say that these are great pieces to get. They are ergonomic, they are well designed, they're very centralized. So taking that small component from each of them, the flat brushed bezel from the Patek Aquanaut, the numeral arrangement of the IWC, the case design of the Bulliver Pilot, and the handset of the Zin 857. The resulting watch you get is the Zenith Pilot, and it's a piece that I think is eagerly pursuing the success of the IWC Mark 19 and Mark 20. The thing is, the Pilot has not released to a massive fanfare, and I think there are more than a few reasons why. First, it's not all that exciting. It's utilitarian in nature. It has a very monochromatic color scheme, apart from the small nod that one variant has towards the rainbow. It also, since it has many elements from previous designs that we can see in here, it doesn't come across as new or exciting. It is very relatable, and I would argue that that is the point. The aim was to be something of a design that was not polarizing, much like a lot of their new product range. Maybe there's a commentary in there about the current state of watch releases and how so many brands play it very safe. And by giving us watches that are all relatable, they end up losing their original identity that they carved out in the first place. Ironic. But saying that, this watch does get across exactly what it's trying to be at first glance. While appearing modern, it has some classic Pilot traits like a clear and legible dial, contrasting sword hands. For the chronograph, that centralized bicompax dial set. And I'd even say that the big date plays into those classic lines nicely. This new Pilot range has a delayed fuse, and I believe that it will be popular in the future. It's given us the foundations, something to work on and evolve. From a change in dial architecture, adjustments in size, different materials, and of course the use of color, something we will get into in a moment. What I think is so great about this collection, and something that has been undersold, is that this is a watch that aims at being a daily wearer. Now you're probably thinking, most watches are aimed at being daily wearers, but not all the time, not for most wrists. It's a rare thing in this category today because Pilot watches are normally aimed at being far larger in diameter. We look at the huge success of the IWC Big Pilot 43mm. It is a watch that's a simple time only, it works very effectively, it definitely has some draws to the 1940s and those early designs. It doesn't have a date complication, it does come on an amazing bracelet, and instead of riding this line of being a field watch and a Pilot watch, it is for all intents and purposes purely a Pilot watch. And what I'm liking about this Zenith collection is it's geared for someone who wants something a little bit different, something a bit more dynamic. It makes no mistake that it is a Pilot watch, but it incorporates a date complication. For the chronograph, a large date, as well as a flyback chronograph, something practical and functional. Instead of having the indices painted onto the dial, all of these have been applied with polished surrounds. The dial has depth and horizontal texturing. One of my favorite features of Zenith watches is that applied star at the 12 o'clock. With all of this going on, it manages to present as something simple, extremely legible. But let's get down to business. The design of this watch is questionable in a few places, especially at the 6 o'clock position. That horizontal baton does come across a bit jarring. Yes, we could say it's used in relation with the date complication, and try and say that 5 times. But the watch does have a verticality to it that I think would benefit a lot more if there was a 6 at the base of the dial instead. So with my small redesign, call it a retouch, all I've done is to place a 6 at the bottom of the dial and move the Pilot text underneath the Zenith logo. I find that it takes away the heaviness from the base of the dial that can plague a lot of watches with dates at the 6 o'clock position. And let's not forget about the simplicity of just using alternative colors, blues, greens. We can see where this collection will go if done right, having corresponding straps marrying with the colors on the dial. In a lot of ways, I think the Pilot collection has done what it set out to do, by creating a relatable design that will appeal to more people. Sure, it does lack some excitement that we would expect from Zenith and their new releases. This one adopting a far more sterile dial with new inclusions like a ceramic case, a new caliber, but it does also establish a design that is modern and that can evolve and will change as the years go by. We could say that it is appealing to a different market segment, and like I said in the beginning, it has a delayed fuse, and I think in years to come, it is going to be a lot more popular. It feels in a lot of ways like a modern Pilot watch that now meets modern requirements and modern standards, while still having that Zenith touch of detail that we know and love, a bicompax chronograph, a flyback feature, and a large date. But what I am enjoying most about this new range is that it is stealthy, it is slick, it does ride under the radar. It's a watch that only you would really know how great it is. With a design that I think is so relatable, it will last for a long time. The foundations of the next generation Zenith Pilot are set. And now all we need to do is wait and see where the watch goes next. Does this Pilot watch get everything right? No. Is it very efficient in its design? Yes. Does it have a lot of great relatable elements to it that I think will appeal to a larger audience? Yes. Is this a piece with tons of potential? Absolutely. And I hope that in the next few years, more people in that majority who don't necessarily look at the brand catch on to how great Zenith pieces are, because they really are fantastic. And as I'm saying this, I have a biplane flying over my roof, fitting enough. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video, and I'll see you in the next one.